And I'm the guy who hit the recording button 20 seconds late. We'll take care of it in post-editing. Peter!
Peter Suzuki, publisher, co-founder of Check Rare, an online publisher focused on rare diseases, rare cancers. Been working in healthcare publishing communications for 25 years. Last 8 or so focused exclusively on rare diseases.
Irene and your friend.
I'm Irene Coyne. I'm an EVP Group Account Director at CMI Media Group. I've been working across both HCP and DTC pharma for the last 25 years. I was excited to join CMI 2 years ago, or about 3 months before the COVID lockdown. So I'm looking forward to getting back in the office and meeting all my coworkers I haven't had the chance to meet in the last almost 2 years now. My friend behind me is Elliot. So he's a little bit of my office mascot. There's a little bit of a backstory behind him. So my older son just graduated from college, but when he was going away to college, he bought it on sale at Target. And he decided that he was going to take it to school with him. And at the last minute, chickened out, thought he didn't want to be the weird kid with the antelope hanging on his wall. So he left it at home, and it has since become a member of our family here. I was on a call recently with one of my clients who correctly identified it as a gemsbuck, which is an African antelope. So, I was excited to learn what Elliot was. So that is me, and that is Elliot.
That's more than about antelopes than you ever thought we're going to know today. Let's all just nod and admit that right now. Give me 20 seconds. I do think I'm seeing Emily come back in. I'm just working for a second to get her back on screen. There we go. No worries. We're in that introduction phase, Emily. Who are you and how the heck did you end up here?
Hi, everybody. So my name is Emily Chow, and I'm a group supervisor at SSCG.
Wonderful.
And yeah, I've been here for 5 years and in the industry for 8.
So let's dive in for a bit. Just a reminder, if you have questions, thanks for keeping on mute. That's going to help us pull this off a little easier. And if you have questions, hit the chat. I'm watching it, and we'll get to your questions. I have no doubt they're more interesting, more useful, and more everything than what I've come up with, at least. So warming up, as we get to the end of 2021 with only about 6 weeks left and holidays and everything coming, I'm curious, the one word on each of your minds that captures the last 12 to 18 months. And if you want to expand on your answer, we would love you to do it too. Do we have volunteers, or is this like my freshman business class at Drexel that I teach? I can do it either way.
I can start since I introed first. I think when I think back on the past 18 months, the word that comes to mind is dynamic. For a number of reasons, both professionally and personally. It's just been a really unpredictable year. And I think from like a professional and from a media standpoint, there's just been a lot of market shifts that have affected all of us, from, the shift away from personal promotion during quarantine. I felt like there was an explosion of new offerings to get up to speed on really quickly. Clients kept changing their strategy with the pandemic. And so dynamic is really an understatement. It's been a fun and rewarding year, but definitely really challenging trying to keep up with everything.
What was you used the word unpredictable. What was your biggest surprise?
I feel like, well, from a work standpoint, I think, I think there hasn't always been a huge trust in NPP, and it's the second that the sales reps were grounded, all of a sudden people started dumping money into our media, and it gave us a really big opportunity to spend it wisely and prove out that, NPP is the way to go. So with dynamic, there's also, I guess, a lot of pressure, but worked out. That's
wonderful. Irene, I think you were chomping to get in there next.
Yeah, I think the word I would use is reinvention. And I think that's for people personally, professionally, kind of evaluating how we want to work, where we want to work, how do we work differently, and I think, Michelle, to your point, it's something we saw as well, just in terms of leadership, really at the, on the brands or at the client level, having an increased visibility and kind of understanding of the value that NPP can bring. So, it's been sort of a reinvention in terms of how they go to market, and kind of what a typical mix looks like.
So you said the change in how, not only how we work, but how we work together. I think if I
Yep.
got it right, what has been the biggest shift in your day to day in that regard?
Well, like I said, as I started, a new job, and I think, Michelle did too here, either right before or during the, during the lockdown. And so I think sort of the video conferencing was something that, I had not been using in my previous role. I think that that's really allowed me to build strong relationships with the people I work with, independent of actually being able to go into the office and see folks. But I think it is, we knowing that sort of working remotely is here to stay. I think we are all looking at how can we work more effectively together? What are the tools and resources that we need to be able to do that, on a longer term basis?
Sure. Peter, dive in, the water's warm.
Yeah, so my word for 2021 is Zoom. And I'll say that we're on Zoom today. It seems that so much of our business, our communications is done through Zoom, and we've all gotten extremely good at it, efficient at it. Even today's prep call, we all hopped on. Todd, you didn't have to tell any of us to change the lighting or to get closer or back. We're all very good at this, sharing information, holding our meetings. We just held a round table 2 days ago. We had people from a person from Taiwan, from Europe, from New York, Boston, California. We were able to all be on the call, share information, record it as you're recording this, and publish it. And I think, this platform, not only have we gotten good at it, we're learning to really learn all the different functions and to conduct business in a whole new way. And I think it'll only get more interesting as the next year comes.
Why more interesting? What's going to change?
Well, just the fact that we've gotten to this point, Todd, right? I probably your first roundtable via Zoom, you probably had a lot more prep time to get things right. And I think we're beyond that. And now we're learning the different functionalities of Zoom, maybe mixing in Zoom with some live meetings. I think it's, a platform that really, a lot more to be done with it.
Sounds good. Emily.
Yeah, I very similar to what everyone said, but I think flexibility is probably my word. Flexibility in work-life balance. Sometimes, you're at home, but you're still working, and it's sometimes easier to get your life stuff done if you're taking a lunch break at home. But also just in terms of professional life as well. Working with your teams, you're going to have to flex between different learning styles, especially because we don't have in person as much anymore. Hopefully, there's going to be a hybrid model in the future of work dynamics. And I think we're going to see that from like a professional standpoint, right? Working with our clients, like there's going to be some in person eventually, but they've gotten to see that NPP works and we can be more targeted and we can be more efficient, and turning on and off campaigns was definitely what we did within the last year, learning from all the shifts. So that's kind of where I think flexibility was my word for the year.
What's the biggest thing you've learned from turning all those campaigns on and off?
It's a lot of work. Yeah, a lot of that detail orientedness, communication key, because you can't just walk down the hall and talk to your team. Like you have to make sure you have meetings and spreadsheets and all of that to make sure everybody's on the same page, working across all of the different departments.
Sure. I promise everyone, I'm not starting every question with Michelle, but the script says I have one more to start with Michelle here, and I'm throwing small curveballs. I'm not going to throw major at them because I like them liking me. I'm curious, Michelle, and then I'm going to dive over to Irene. As we move into the new year, curious what you're hearing from your clients, your partners, and others in terms of themes, areas of emphasis. Where's the flag planted in 2022 as the priorities?
Yeah, so I'm definitely hearing a lot of different themes popping up. I can start with one that's been popping up a lot more often more recently, which is it's not anything new, but like innovation and new channels. We know that every pharma brand's going to have a target list and run in the endemic space, but suddenly I'm sitting in meetings and I'm hearing more from clients that they have interest in white space opportunities, which I think is something we've heard forever, but they've never really meant it. And so now the phrase that keeps coming up is looking at our HCPs as consumers. So we're exploring, newer channels like audio or connected TV or addressable TV to reach HCPs in a more non-endemic space and just have that balance with our endemic plans. But we want to make sure that we're still, balancing and enabling us to be accountable with the dollars like we talked about and still drive ROI.
Is there one of those channels over others that you think has got a little more buzz behind it, or you think is going to stick, or you just are hotter on, more bullish on?
I'm a little bit hotter on like the connected TV, just because at this point it's a little bit more executable. I think audio is a great idea in theory, and there's definitely some new offerings out there that make sense, but for me, it's still a little bit unproven. I think a lot of different channels with audio and audio opportunities are, they're getting there, but I haven't seen quite the uptake quite yet.
Sounds good. Irene, what's your take?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we're hearing from, at least some of my clients is Omni Channel. So that's kind of the big, the big buzzword, at least for the coming year for us. I think that this is, whether you call it Omni Channel, you call it next best action, or whatever you're calling it there. I mean, it's more about providing kind of a better, more streamlined, more impactful customer experiences. I think that, there's a greater understanding of the overlap of, many brands in a particular, on a particular target list, and just really trying to make sure that, you're streamlining that and looking across, kind of all the HCPs, and making sure that there's no overlap. And, I see a lot more, brands and clients are investing in more kind of omni-channel strategy to understand, channel preferences of different customers, agency side omni-channel execution platforms, or, many are actually even starting to put the necessary technologies and processes in place to build their own platforms internally. So that's really, causing us to, take a look at, I don't want to say like our roles and responsibilities and our processes and how we buy and negotiate media. So that's been really, really interesting. And I think the other thing would be is with the greater senior level eyes on NPP, that there's a greater emphasis on, media measurement, learning, and best practices. And I think innovation kind of comes along with that, but we are seeing much greater partnership with, with sort of advanced analytics teams at our client side that are more involved with us. Whereas I feel like, we maybe get a couple meetings with them, over the course of the year, we're passing data to them, and now they want to understand, like, what do these programs look like? How do they function? What is the user experience? What type of data can we get out of there? So it's been, again, really, exciting, but, pressure in terms of there just being a lot more eyes and involvement in kind of what we do.
Irene, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what the heck? It's Thursday. And you could wave it when it comes to media measurement, and you could make all your partners in the publication space, the publishers. What's your wish for your colleagues on that side of the aisle, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to measurement and analytics and whatnot?
Well, I mean, for me, it's about the accessibility, like, of the data. So, I mean, it's more about, can we get, PLD data, I don't want to say like on a daily, weekly basis without exorbitant costs that go along with that. So I think we are putting a lot more pressure on our, publisher partners to, be able to give us that data, on a much more frequent basis, because as we start looking at things like omni-channel, we're going to have more expectation, that we're optimizing, more frequently. And we just can't do that without having the right data.
You're muted, Todd.
Yeah, fatal flaw. You hit the button because the kids are about to come home from school and it just goes south. Peter, Emily, either one of you want to jump in? I can move on. You tell me.
I have a question for Irene, if it's okay. Can you
Whoa, we're
explain?
gonna bounce back around.
Sorry,
now.
Todd, I'm
Here we
stepping
go,
on your
friends.
toes.
No questions.
Can you tell us, what do you mean by omni channels? Not to sound, too silly, but like, what is an omni channel?
So it being, I mean, it's not just multi-channel, but it's really being able to have, clear understanding of your target audiences, segmentation that allows you to deliver, very specific messages at a specific time, and being able to orchestrate sort of that customer's journey, from point A to point B, and being able to kind of understand, when they switch from one segment of, they're aware down to trial and loyalty, but really being able to have an ecosystem that can, automate some of that. So it's not just, being able to have channels talking to each other, but it's really just, it's really about building sort of an ecosystem that can do that without as much manual effort as well.
Yeah, thank you. As a publisher, it's interesting for me to hear exactly what the definition is. But Todd, I'll just say one thing: content from a publisher's perspective, we're being asked more and more to create content and then engage audiences with that specific content.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'm going to dive in, and I'll just throw this up, and maybe we can get around the horn a bit. Privacy issues and GDPR, or what's going on in California and what's popping in other places, gets a lot of attention. And I think we all believe it's going to continue to get attention. Curious all of your take, and let's just throw it to everybody, how it's affecting your work, what you're seeing. If you could riff on that for a minute or two. It's probably one of the things I hear from members the most is the conversation about privacy. So who wants to dive in?
I'll start it off.
Great, thanks.
Real quickly, just to say, up until the last year or so, we were doing it on our own. We had a data manager and a few people helping, work with the data. But I think those days are kind of going by the wayside, and we're finding that we need, new partners. And DMD is an excellent partner, and being part of a bigger consortium that shares data, that allows us to kind of not feel like we're out there all alone, but that we can, work with a bigger group and share our data with theirs and be part of a network.
Yeah, and I'll say from the agency side, we're seeing like the shifts in regulation, right? Whether it's government or from the tech base themselves. Obviously the transition from cookie-based targeting to more identity-based. So it's definitely going to impact how we're buying and what we're measuring and how we're measuring. I think that process, based on the latest in Google, like they're going to publish it in 2022, 2023. It's getting pushed back a little bit. But what we're trying to do now is we're giving our clients, our brand clients, but also their regulatory teams and like anyone that would be a part of like the process and the approval process for anything that we would eventually go live, and just have them understand what these regulations mean, so that when these shifts in targeting or execution occur, or programs that we're buying occur, they're fully aware, and we've kind of prepped our clients to understand as much as we know right now for what's being published. And I think that's the approach that we're taking for now, until we have a little bit more of a deadline of when this is officially kind of coming into play, and how it's going to really shift how we buy and what we measure.
Yeah, and I can jump in here too. I mean, what we're seeing is kind of an increased client focus on these areas. So it's really starting to get incorporated into our contractual relationships with clients. So there is a more pressing need for us to, understand all of those, those regulations. All agencies, are starting to have like more comprehensive data and privacy, like compliance practices, in terms of outlining all of how we retain our data, dispose of our data, transfer data, regardless of whether that's on behalf of our clients, our publishers, our individual employees, and I think the accountability for, data management and privacy is becoming more infused into the culture of agencies, with focused personnel and resources, training of staff, adoption of certain policies and practices. Because honestly, the penalties for not having these in place, are not only a detriment to sort of our reputation, but the bottom line because of the stiff financial penalties. And I think when we look at, how we're working with, publishers and suppliers, I mean, because we work in media where we're an intermediary between clients and publishers, we have to increase our due diligence, with our publisher partners and, data partners, with much more significant vetting of their own data management privacy practices to make sure that they're in line with our standards. Because a lot of times, again, we're being held sort of contractually, with our clients, and, that kind of runs downhill to our publisher partners and making sure that, we're vetting their opt-in language and their privacy policies, et cetera.
Sure. What's going on with you with all that, Michelle?
Well, I think, in terms of everything that was said, I agree with all of it. I think, we're all kind of in the same boat trying to navigate something that we see coming forward. I actually would like to do a little curveball here, and related to privacy, just call out, I think it's important while we have the publishers on the line to just mention, in pharma, I think we rely heavily on email. And so one of the things that's kind of top of mind is that just with some of the recent Apple updates around privacy, I think we're starting to hear and have discussions with a lot of the suppliers and partners just around how we keep email on our plans and keep it accountable. So I think everybody knows this, but if you don't, there's a new Apple feature that allows you to kind of opt out of being counted, and the bulk of the email traffic is opened on Apple devices. So looking forward to planning 2022, I think most of us want to keep emails on our plans, but we're going to need to work with you, the publishers, to ensure a way to adequately measure so that we can, again, there's extra accountability on us from the clients, and email to me is a cornerstone of a lot of media plans. So how are we going to ensure that we're able to, continue to be accountable, as I said, and find ways around it?
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
I just
Yeah,
wanted
go
to add
ahead.
to that. I would say really working with us to define the KPIs to that point, Michelle, open rates are no longer going to really matter because of the updates. So how do we filter down and make sure that an email KPI is now maybe something different? So I think that's really where that'll kind of immediately shift once all this goes through.
Privacy adjacent.
There we go. Emily, let's stay with you for a minute. There's a whole host of tactics that were readily deployed prior to the pandemic, and medical media or medical meetings was one that comes to mind. It seems like they're slowly coming back into favor. I'd love to start with you and get your sense on how they're fitting in. Where are they back? How degree in which they're mattering to you right now, and what do you see in terms of their return, if there is a return?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we've seen through our data and our surveys and our proprietary tools that we have, convention is definitely something that the HCPs want. They want to learn from there. That's a huge resource for them. Obviously, we saw really quick pivots of either cancellations or, all going straight to virtual with the initial onset of COVID. There were some bumps there, right? It wasn't really executed as best as it could, but now that I think this is our new kind of ecosystem, hybrid is absolutely going to be what's happening in the future. And I think that we are going to work with our suppliers. So for any of the publishers on there, I think really having a hybrid model will ultimately have to stay. And I think that's really where we want to go. So integrating both some in-person opportunities, but really having that virtual online base as something else that we can do. We've definitely seen that the data is there, that they're using the conventions and they're using all of the kind of announcements and updates in anything that is pharma related. So I don't think conventions are going away anytime soon. It's just going to look different. It's going to be reinvented, and I think it's going to be hybrid.
Fair enough. Peter, dive in.
Yeah, well, I'm going to agree with Emily that it seems like a hybrid model is the path forward, at least for the short term. And you know, we look at it, the conferences are so important. You know, we're in a relationship-based industry, physicians with their patients, physicians with each other, publishers and media with the physicians, that they need to come back. I think that, you know, it's something that is missed in these virtual meetings is the sharing of data, the sharing of information, or getting information from a booth via a virtual meeting just doesn't have, as it's not as meaningful as being live. But, you know, I mean, we were just at a physician group down in Virginia, and they don't feel it's coming back anytime soon. And we got to think physicians are the ones that attending these meetings, and they're the ones driving it, yet they work for hospitals, clinics that don't want them out there traveling so much and coming back, and perhaps, you know, with the worry of getting COVID or being put out of work for a little bit. So I think for this next year, at least, we wish they were coming back, but I think, as Emily said, it's going to be a hybrid model. And some people will be in attendance, but most people will be virtual like this.
Sure. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? We're going to get to a bit of a lightning round type thing where we're going to guess where we're headed. Question for everybody. What's the one thing that came to be during the pandemic that's here to stay? Hybrid doesn't count. You've already used that. Zoom calls doesn't count, Peter. I'm looking at your title.
You took my answer. I'll start it off real quickly and just say working from home, working virtually, working more casually, I think are here to stay. And doing these calls Zoom and being more relaxed about it. Todd, maybe 2 years ago, you wouldn't have brought up your kids during the meeting. You wouldn't run out as we did and or if your kid walked in the background, it wouldn't be a big deal. I think so. We've got a more casual way of doing business. And, you know, I'm sorry to bring up Zoom, but these types of calls are probably here with us going forward.
Cheated. That would be a failure in my college class, but we'll let you by. Irene, big picture, strategy, tactics, whatever. What's here to stay?
So what I hope is here to stay is is telemedicine and kind of the advancement of that over the last couple years. You know, and I think when we started, everything is remote or sort of telemedicine, even in certain circumstance where it shouldn't be. And I was just at a doctor the other day who happened to mention insurance is no longer covering us for telemedicine visits. And I sort of was like, well, that's really frustrating, because like there absolutely is times when, I don't say you're getting blood results or something like that, and you just need to get on the phone, with your doctor and have a conversation about it, and not necessarily, drive 20 minutes, sit in the office, et cetera. So I hope telemedicine is here to stay and is used more effectively than maybe it was during the pandemic. But, I hope that the insurance companies don't sort of cut that back significantly or cut the funding back to the physicians for that. Because I do think that there is certainly a subset of people, outside of just pure convenience of telemedicine, that are now able to get the care, that they need because of geography or mobility or whatever those issues are.
Emily, Michelle, I feel like you guys are the two in play still here on my bingo card.
I mean, I had a few and they were already mentioned, or I can't say them, but basically I think the other thing that I think I've heard through is really data-driven everything. So whether that's Omni Channel, everything is now really data-driven. I think we need to be able to prove what we're doing and prove what we're spending our media funds on, that it has some sort of effect. There's some sort of ROI. Just like Irene mentioned, like the heavy lift and the partnership with analytics from pharma to agency is extremely important now. And it's been something that has always had eyes on it, but I feel like it's a very intense meeting now. You know, we're looking at every placement, we're looking at every channel, and we're really trying to tell a story about what's working and what's not. And then the positive part is now the brands are actually kind of making that ecosystem, right? They're taking what we're telling them and they're adjusting maybe target lists, or they're helping to kind of bridge the gap and have it a full circle message. So I think that's really what is here to stay.
Yeah. I was going to say telemedicine, but I think just to build on what I said earlier, and I think it's come up a few times, I think, you know, the one positive thing that's here to stay, I think, is that we've proven the power of NPP. So, you know, we've shown that we could impact in a bigger way than even I initially knew or thought. Clients are starting to believe in the data, as Emily was saying, and it's helping to let us drive decisions. So, you know, I hope to see a continued belief, as Irene said, like senior people getting involved in looking at what we're doing and just being able to prove our value.
So I'm going to flip it on its head. What's something that came during the pandemic that's got to go? Peter,
the
you may not
COVID
go
15
back to
pounds
Zoom.
I've gained count.
Okay, besides that, I mean, all of that. Yep. All right.
Because that would be my answer.
All of us. Yeah. That's a good
Me
one.
too, as I just got, you know, we talk about the informality. My daughter just brought me pizza. It's a good day here. What's got to go? Tactics, strategy, things, you know, core to what we do, not how we do it, the nature of medical media.
I'm going to keep it light because I see some of the members of my team on the phone and we were just having this conversation yesterday. The thing that drives my team crazy is some of the like new offerings that popped up during COVID. So at the time it seemed really innovative and it made sense, but the like things like adding the add a rep button that we thought were going to be really unique and impactful. And we ended up having this huge lift to create them. And it really didn't get much traction from a performance standpoint. So we're ready to walk away from those. Shout out to my team members.
I'm just thrilled you had this conversation the day before. It means it was a decent question. Emily, what's got to go?
Well, it wasn't really related, but
you could have played along, Michelle.
Okay, sorry, it was related.
Thank you. Just remember that down the road a little bit. I won't forget this moment. Emily, what's got to go? Tactics, strategies, the core of what we're doing.
So I think, all right, I think like what we're doing in the core strategies are okay. I would definitely say the one thing that I think needs to go is just everything being a meeting. There definitely needs to be more of a balance. And I think as this is now definitely a new normal, like making things more streamlined, making communication a little bit easier, because before, like we said, if we were in person, you could kind of pop down to somebody's desk, have a quick conversation. And now like there's no day that I don't have meetings from 9 to 5. And then I'm like working past hours because I have no time to do my work during the middle of the day. So
definitely,
to me, that's like the one thing. I think just more efficiency in terms of communication, but effective communication is where I'm going for next year. My goal.
Irene, I'm sure. Yeah.
I would extend that to like, you know, the need to use 30 different tools to get your job done and being, you know, or at least being able to have sort of a single place to find those things, or a single system that's helping you, you know, because I think, you know,
we've over-engineered in the pandemic?
Teams and Zoom and, you know, Skype and just trying to sort of figure out what is, because I do think like as we were down on lockdown, I mean, I feel like no one ever anticipated it was going to go this long. So it's sort of like, you're like, oh, well, 3 more months. And at like what point, I think we're at the point where it's like, okay, this is like the new normal now. And I think we need to, you know, put our money where our mouth is and invest in the tools that are going to be used long-term. And it's not like, this is just a short-term sort of stop and we're going to get back to normal and kind of the way that we've been doing things. So, you know, I do think that, you know, what's got to go is like having way too many things that you need that just reduces the effectiveness of being able to do your job.
Hear that, publishers? Irene wants to talk about simplifying life. There's got to be something good in that. Peter, what's got to go besides Zoom? I know that already.
Well,
Don't
I
be
know,
I
sorry
love
to
Zoom.
say.
As someone that had to switch to Teams, I'm like Zoom, I miss Zoom so much.
Zoom, we have a love-hate relationship with it. We wish we didn't need it, and to have these meetings and to meet virtually and sit in a chair for an hour and not fidget. But we have to. I guess so. The one thing I hope that we do less of this. Not that it goes, that there's more live meetings and there's more meetings with publishers, media people, and physician meetings. Sorry to bring Zoom into every one of
It's
my
all
answers,
right.
but,
I'm just a guy on a mission. That's all. Can't blame me for what I do. Question here from the folks. More pharma companies have their own first-party data. How has that impacted how they are working with agencies and publishers? Who wants to try it?
I'll just throw out real quick, getting a physician getting a communication from a pharma company versus a publisher or a third party sometimes is viewed a little differently. So in a way, it's good. We always do list matches, not only with pharma, with media, but I think there's a place for both of them.
Yep, I was going to say the same.
Okay. Yeah, hold on, just scrolling and not doing a great job of it. And Lori Raskin writes, at DHC conference seems pharma is much more focused on customer experience, in parens, HCP and patients, and measuring satisfaction to ensure they are meeting their needs. Are agencies or publishers involved in that? And if so, how?
Yeah, I can kind of chime in. I think it's a little bit of what we were talking about, right? So Omni Channel, I would definitely say our clients are really focused on messaging segmentation and journey-based strategies. So that would be much more of a collaborative approach of we're doing an HCP campaign and a DTP campaign. How are they overlapping? How are they merging? And how are we ensuring that messages are getting across to both audiences to like help a conversation occur, to help data be sent through both parties so that if a patient brings something up, a new treatment, the HCPs are well aware of it, even if it just launched. So I think that's really where we've tried to go in that manner, in terms of like measuring some success and doing more ROI studies across HCP and DTP studies and programs.
Muted
muted out again,
Muted
Todd.
again. Steph Hanaway just pinged me, and if y'all know Steph, but Steph has this great gig right now. She has a lot of great gigs, but the one that we love doing with her is that she is the editor-in-chief of our special reports series, where we ask you all what's going on and try to filter it back. An idea to get best practices, idea to get what is best practices, to understand what's going on better. Let's use that phrase. And she wanted me to remind everybody to keep a lookout in your email box. We won't worry about the delivery rates with Apple, but the next report, which is coming out in the next week or so, is all about virtual versus in-person meetings. So keep a lookout on it. You want to know what you all think? Steph already knows. She'll tell you in a week. So 2 more questions, unless anybody else chimes in, and you can over the chat. Let's pull out our crystal balls. Wait a minute, we've been doing that. Write the headline in one of our trade publications 2 or 3 years from now. What are we going to be talking about down the road? Yeah, I said in a year. I just, when I gave them the questions, I pushed it out 2 or 3 to have some more fun. What's the headline down the line about medical media and all of this going on?
Well, I think one thing would be either virtual reality or augmented reality, where we're seeing some of those offerings that are actually fairly executable that we've recommended for 22. And then also just the increase in wearables, right? So obviously like Apple Watches have been here for a while, but with the new latest one, like it has a lot of health information. So I think depending on the brands you're working on, like that could be integrated into kind of the thought process. I don't know if there's any advertising opportunities yet, but just keeping a pulse on what technology is able to do, and how it could eventually get integrated.
It's 2 or 3 years down the line. We got time to figure out how to monetize it further,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
What are the other headlines, friends?
I think we will have helped close the gap on sort of some of the health disparities. So I think diversity, equity, inclusion has sort of become a little bit of a buzzword, you know, and it really should be more than just a buzzword, more than just sort of a percentage of media spend. I think we will actually see it come through in how we support and grow a more diverse supplier community, and how we show meaningful representation in both creative and media initiatives with like messages that, you know, truly resonate. You know, and I think we will be working more with our clients, with our, you know, publisher partners to help close the gap in those, you know, various health disparities that lead to things like under testing, under diagnosis, and under treatment.
Okay. Peter, Michelle?
Yeah, I'll hop in real quick. So I cheated on this. I went to my CME director, who's a PhD and smarter than me on these topics, but we feel that all the research being put into COVID over this last couple of years are going to lead to some amazing advances in the immune system and you know, that type of specialty, autoimmune specialties in the years ahead. And you said 2 or 3 years. Luckily, you said that because that's when probably things will start, you know, this research done unrelated to other parts of we're in rare diseases. We expect a lot of things. We're already seeing it. Something called the complement system in Gaucher disease. It has to do with the immune system and what we've learned over these last couple of years. And the other quick thing is healthcare publishers, we're in the healthcare industry, getting the proper messaging out. There's so much misinformation. We've seen it with COVID, the vaccines. You know, there's all different voices out there in the public, whether it's social media, publications, and there's going to be an opportunity and a responsibility for a lot of people to make sure it's good to have dissenting voices, but that the proper information comes forward.
I love everyone's answer, so it's kind of hard to follow those because I was thinking a bit more tactically. But so I was thinking about how, you know, we do a lot of work with KOLs in the space. And so I think that one of the things that's been missing on the HCP side is really embracing influencers. We see it so much on the consumer side. And so I feel like in the initial question, in the next year or so, we might start to see that pop to the top and be something that we could start to explore and look into. But diversity and inclusion is probably a lot more important.
Well, I said, what should we be focusing on? Not necessarily like what we will be focused on. But.
Yeah, and shameless plug to the AMM panel that we have, or not panel, the working group that we have working specifically on that.
Yeah, we do. And I'm grateful for Michelle and others who have been involved in that and more to come into the new year on that. Last question. It's a choose your own adventure. You can pick which direction you want to go. I'm curious, something that continues to excite you about our industry or something you wish you could change about our industry, aside from Zoom calls, virtual stuff. Get to the meat of what we do and something, be profound. It's your last thought you're going to leave with these good people.
Who should I go first?
Sure.
Okay. So my I'll go with something that kind of bothers me a little bit, and maybe something we can look beyond, is that media and what we do a lot of times is a numbers game, or it can be portrayed as a numbers game. Impressions, click-throughs, page views, banner types, acronyms that we have to look up here in the office to say, we have to give this data, what is this? When a lot of times it's about educating a doctor, educating a patient, and we're in the rare disease world. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 doctors learn something about a disease or a symptom can make a big change. And every day we talk to doctors, and I wish that this business was a little bit more about that, especially with the digital, all about the numbers. I think misses some really key points.
Yeah, I can build on that because, you know, I think from, you know, most of us choose to work in healthcare because we believe what we do has a positive impact on patients, professionals, et cetera. And so like the thing I'm most excited about is the pipeline of like those unique targeted therapies, treatments for rare diseases. Like that's what kind of excites me. And sort of on the flip side is, making sure that, pharma companies are supporting these, these products. Not all of them have like the biggest commercial return, but so that's sort of like both excites me and a thing that I think we need to change, because, I geek out a little bit on the science part of that. And, I do think, seeing all of these sort of unmet needs finally being met just really excites me about, the many years to come that I still will be working in healthcare.
Yeah, I think building on that, something that I'm excited for, but also have to date been disappointed in, is just trying to figure out ways to, and I think Emily might have said this earlier, like integrate across patient and consumer for 360, because I feel like it's kind of our job and our role outside of just settling drugs to make sure that we're helping HCPs really hear what their patients are saying and being able to interact with them and actually make their lives better. And thus far, I feel like everything kind of is done in a vacuum. And so I think, there's just room for us to grow and do better in that space.
Yeah, and Michelle, I think I am kind of taking some notes here just around like the payer and the managed care piece, which I feel like I call it the third leg of the stool to both, HCP and patient, because, if we don't have some level of focus, and this is sort of I don't say under, served community from an NPP perspective, but, if we're not helping sort of payers, managed care decision makers, understand, our products and the needs to certain patients, like they're not going to have the coverage, that they need to get it at a cost that they can truly afford without having, for both our patients and without our HCPs having to jump through like a total number of hoops. So anytime I see like, synergies around HCP and DTC, like I always feel like I need to interject that there's like a leg of the stool that's missing in that combination.
We catch everybody. I've lost track in this bouncing around. I won't lie.
No, I think I'm the last one, but
All
I
right,
really
thanks
wanna
for that.
I definitely want to pull together what everyone said. I think what excites me is, we're working in healthcare, and through the last 2 years, we've seen how important healthcare is, with everything going on with COVID, comorbidities, and people, having access or not having access. It's the forefront of what people are talking about. And I feel very kind of lucky to be working in this space, especially during this time. One thing I think I'm really excited that would change or emerge a little bit more is having that seat at the table. Like Michelle said, I think brands are finally realizing like NPP can have a true impact. And I feel like we're going to get more integrated into working across the sales force and having our brand teams like really bridge the gap, because where sales may or may not be able to have that personal connection with a doctor, like we can fill in the white space, we can fill in the gap. Same thing with, being able to reach and talk to the patients and personalize this medicine, right? So it's not just like what we're trying to sell and get the bottom line, get the numbers, but like what are the stories and how can this impact people, and what's the awareness of all the treatments in order for it to make an impact for future patients down the line. So I think that's really, for me, what I'm most excited about for just our role in this whole ecosystem of medical marketing, like to just increase, and we've always had value, but I think it's really coming through now that we were forced into it with this radical change of COVID.
Well, with that, Michelle, Irene, Peter, Emily, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everybody who's on the line today. We'll have a tape of this shared in one of the upcoming newsletters and on the site. And hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and get to Turkey Day quick and have a wonderful couple of days with family and whatnot. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Bye.
So long.